Jesus, 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 ጌታዬ 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 አምላኬ 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 አምላኬ.
Now that is a song which has been recorded at Calais. It's called the Calais Camp Song. This week, French authorities have demolished a makeshift church and mosque with no warning as the Calais refugee camp known as the Jungle. This is at the Calais refugee camp known as the Jungle. The London-based charity Help Refugees are very involved with the camp and one of the first organisations to report on the demolition. I'm glad to say that the co-founder from the charity, Lliana Bird, is here to describe the situation firsthand. Lliana, thanks very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
First of all, tell us, this was completely unexpected that they were going to demolish this. It was a mosque and it was a church.
Yeah, that's right. A couple of weeks earlier, we had been told that there was this sort of buffer zone, about 100 metres or so, around the camp that was going to be cleared.
Right.
So we did have warning of that, and we managed to relocate the shelters from that area. There's about 1,500 people had to be moved, which was quite a task. But we were given assurances that the places of worship, the church and the mosque, would be left untouched and they could remain in that area. So although the area around it had been cleared, we were under the understanding that these would be left alone. So it did come as a complete shock. The mosque was demolished first thing in the morning, and then a lot of our volunteers and the refugees alike and the pastor of the church really pleaded with the authorities to hold back from bulldozing, and were given 1 or 2 hours to try and move some of the surrounding shelters from the area as well.
And how did people respond to this?
To be totally honest, it was a very, very distressing day.
Right.
People were very upset. You know, these are people who are incredibly vulnerable and have very little in their lives. So their faith and their area that they can come together and meet and, you know, not just pray or worship or, you know, learn about the Bible, but also come together and have some sort of psychological support. It was very traumatic for them to see that completely removed. There were very distressing scenes. A lot of people were, you know, shouting and crying and saying, you know, we're peaceful people. Why are you doing this? The authorities asked if the pastor would remove the cross from the top of the makeshift church. And he said, no, I won't be complicit with this. And so there was really upsetting scenes as well of bulldozers kind of pulling down these crosses. It was very upsetting, distressing day, to be honest, all round.
I mean, and this is on top of course, people who are living in this so-called jungle, which is what the, you know, I suppose the media or whoever has labelled it. What is it really like there?
It's a very, very unique situation there. Unlike other refugee camps, there's a feeling of hopelessness. And of course, there's no huge, large organisations there like the UNHCR or Red Cross who are monitoring it. So small organisations like ourselves, who actually started out only 5 months ago as grassroots groups and have had to grow incredibly fast and learn a lot. You know, I'm actually a broadcaster myself by trade, and, you know, and we've all come from these different areas. We've had to come together and try to make it work. So it is very much a makeshift camp in a way. It's very different to other ones. And like I said, the overwhelming feeling when you're there is that there's such a feeling of being in limbo. You know, there's no hope really for these people because they're very much forgotten and ignored by the rest of the world. And refugees on the rest of their journeys through Europe or through wherever else, they have a hope. They're going somewhere. They have a mission, you know. And I think that keeps their spirits really going. And I think that's a huge part of what we're trying to do in Calais as well. Not just provide people with their basic human needs, but also a little bit of dignity, a little bit of respect. And, you know, people there have a lot of psychological damage quite often. You know, they've come through very difficult circumstances, and that has to also be considered at some point. You know, young unaccompanied children with severe psychological trauma who are right now being ignored. So that's another thing that I really think needs to be looked at as well.
There have been calls that David Cameron should visit and see firsthand what exactly is going on in Calais. What do you make of those calls, and what difference do you think his visit might make?
I think it absolutely would be a really, really good thing. I mean, as an organisation, we've tried to steer a little bit away from the politics side and look at the humanitarian crisis which is there. But I certainly think that anyone who's in a position to make decisions about thousands of people's lives needs to see firsthand what's going on and to really understand the situation. There's been a huge amount of misconceptions here in the UK, in the media, all over the world about the people in the camp, about what's going on there. And I think the reaction we've had whenever we've brought anyone there to visit it has been one of complete shock. They've been incredibly surprised to see as many women, as many children, as many unaccompanied children there, to see the terrible conditions they're living in, you know, up to -5 degrees, mud, rain. It really hits at home. So I certainly think that, yeah, it would be brilliant if Cameron or anyone in the government would want to come along and have a look and really make an informed decision. That's all we're asking really here.
And you say that there aren't any of the big organisations there looking after these people. So, but there are lots of, I know lots of, you know, grassroots initiatives that are going on, as you said, and your organisation is one of them. It's in a way quite shocking to think that there are that many people going through that kind of trauma that you're describing, and no one from these big organisations are coming.
It really was shocking. To be honest with you, when we first started out this journey, my plan was, along with a friend of mine, Josie, was to try and raise £1,000 and to get a van load of goods and to drive over. And we really expected there'd be someone to meet us there that we could hand the stuff over to and walk away and feel like, you know, we've done our good deed.
Sure.
We arrived and we found this a local French charity called Auberge de Migrants. Mostly about a handful, maybe 5 to 6 retired people doing an incredible job, but they had no storage space, they had no warehouse. There were people from Britain driving over and just really dumping stuff in. It was a bit of a dumping ground really, and it was causing chaos and a lot of lack of dignity for the people on the ground there as well, who were, you know, having to sort of scramble to get goods. So that was part of what we did is try and partner with Auberge de Migrants, because they obviously know the lay of the land, to hire a huge warehouse. We now have a massive shelter building program, a warehouse, kitchens, and it really has moved forward. But yeah, it was very, very shocking to us to see that there were no aid organisations, the big ones that you expect to be greeted with when you arrive, and the governments as well, just really ignoring this situation.
What would you say to people listening who say, well, you know what, I'm trying to just keep myself together, let alone anyone else? And we know we've been talking a lot about fear on this programme, about the different forms of fear, and there is a fear, it seems, out there about these refugees. You know, will they come in? Will they take our bread? Will they take our homes? You know, I mean, goodness me, I could go on, as you well know. How would you say, because you have seen, you have lived, you've experienced Calais, what would you say to those people?
Well, I think first of all, you know, everyone's entitled to their fears, and I would invite anyone who feels that way to come along and have a look, meet some of the people there, and again, make an informed decision. What our experience is as well is that a lot of the people there have come from, you know, often come from well-off backgrounds, or they're very educated, or they have incredible skills. We just made a video, actually. We literally at random invited about 40 of the refugees and said, come and tell us what you did before you had to leave your homes. And it was everything from pro footballer to animator to software engineer. So I think people would be quite surprised about that anyway. Secondly, we're really not saying let's just take everyone and you know, let's just bring everyone in here and then just let them loose in the streets. That's not what we're trying to say. What we're saying is let's create some due process. At the moment, there is no way for people to be processed who want to come to the United Kingdom to be reunited with their families, for example. So you have an unaccompanied child there who has perhaps a brother or a sister here who's very traumatized. That person should be given a person to speak to, some authority, some process we can go through. Let's create legitimate process and actually start looking at people's genuine claims. That's all we're really asking for.
Lliana, we'll have to leave it there, but do give us the details of the organisation or the charity that you've set up, it seems, from nothing.
Yes, it's called Help Refugees. You can find out more information, www.helprefugees.org.uk. We're also on Twitter and Facebook, and where we give lots of updates and news directly from the camp, and all over Europe, in fact, where we're now working as well. Thank you so much for coming in this morning and updating us. Lliana Bird there from Help